Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Back with us on the program, Julia Schopick. She is a patient advocate, health writer, and creator of the award-winning blog honestmedicine.com, the author of the Amazon best-selling book Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. She is coaching a number of patients on how to approach their doctor about treatment they don't know about. And we'll talk about that on the program today, how to find the right information and how to present that to your doctor. Julia, welcome back on the program. It's great to have you with us once again.
Rick, thank you. It is so wonderful to be here with you. As I told you before the interview, you are my favorite interviewer.
Well, thank you very much. And you are one of my favorite guests because you have good information. It's actually life-saving information for many people. And it's interesting, we'll take just a few minutes here at the beginning to go through your story and then talk about how we find the right information, how we get the right information in the right hands. And you can find the past shows that we did with Julia by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, YouTube for the video version, go to iTunes for the audio version of the program. And this is not something you set out to do, to be a patient advocate. This happened out of necessity back in 1990. Talk about that and how you got to the point today where you're literally helping thousands of people worldwide.
Well, I'd like to go back to a little bit before 1990,
Sure.
if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Because I was actually primed, by my family's history not to want to help people through the medical maze.
Yes.
My dad was a doctor, and in the good old days, I put that in quotes,
Yes.
of medicine, and he told me, boy, he said, the financial pull in medicine is just it's going wild. And he would tell me that he saw doctors taking off people's breasts, saying they had cancer when they didn't because anyway, I was terrified of the medical system. And you interviewed me the last time, I believe, about my grandmother who was told by Dr. Mayo
Yes.
that she had 6 months to live and went to Germany for a treatment that they were not doing in this country. And she ended up outliving Dr. Mayo. That was the kind of punchline,
I remember that story quite well.
Do you love that
Yes.
story?
Yes.
Anyway, so I just want to point out that when I heard that my husband had, and when we both heard that at the age of 40, he had a huge, size of an orange, cancerous brain tumor, we were terrified. And you would have thought that I would have just gone, oh my God, let me go online and find out. I didn't. And this is why I decided after all this was over, that I had to help other people. I went just like everybody else. Even though I had been prepared by my father not to do this, I did. I went in lockstep with what the doctors were recommending. And, he did have to have the tumor taken out. I mean, it was the size of an orange, They like to compare him to fruit,
Yes.
But but he did the radiation, and he also did chemo, which to this day I'm not sure was a good idea. But the radiation, I went along with. And then he began to have just every side effect. I mean, I guess you'd call it complication. I don't consider a stroke a side effect. Do you?
No, not at all.
He had
Not
a
at
radiation-caused stroke because that can happen when you do radiation to the brain. He got hydrocephalus. I mean, it was a mess. Hydrocephalus is water on the brain, and when that happens, they have to open the person up again and put a shunt in, and then the shunt mount. Anyway, I don't want to gross people out because, but it wasn't pretty. And at that point, my husband was outliving his prognosis of 18 months to 3 years, even without my being an activated patient, an empowered patient. But at that point, when he began to really suffer from the side effects, I decided I had to do some research. And I did. And thank goodness I did, because I found a nutritionist named Dr. Jean Wallace who really, really, really made him feel better, made his outcome be better. He felt great. She put him on a good diet. She gave him supplements, that helped him immeasurably. And what I found was that the doctors were not at all interested in anything we were doing. But Rick, I was selfish. And I sort of said, you know what? They're not interested, but they're not stopping me. But then the picture changed. In 2001, he had a recurrence of the tumor. And I want to stress that usually these tumors come back way before the 10, 11-year mark, but his didn't. And then I knew, remember I told you that he had all these complications?
Yes.
Well, the complications were indicative of his skin not healing. You know, radiation I call the gift that keeps on giving because it makes the skin so fragile. And when he had the recurrence, I knew he shouldn't have the surgery for the second tumor. I just knew it. It was a slow growing tumor. I went to see his doctor. I said, you know, this is a bad idea. The doctor said it's an excellent idea. You know, it's an easy tumor to get. And I said, okay. And he had the surgery, and it turns out I was right because the skin this time just wouldn't heal. And the doctors kept doing everything they know how to do, which is more surgeries, of course,
Yes.
and in a vain attempt, Rick, to find two pieces of skin that would hold together. Now, that doesn't make much sense if you think about it, but we're not talking sense here. We're talking standard of care. And they kept doing this, and he had 8 additional surgeries in a vain attempt to get two pieces of skin that would heal. And with each surgery, he got sicker and sicker and sicker. He became more brain injured. This was a man who walked into the surgery telling jokes originally. He got so brain injured, he even became almost paralyzed. And he had not been anywhere near paralyzed before. He became incontinent and bedbound. And at that point, I found through a colleague, through one of my PR clients, I found a treatment called Silverlawn, Silverlon. And it is an FDA approved treatment for all non healing wounds. And I say that slowly because I want people to know about Silverlawn. And I got permission. I won't go through the details. They're all the dramatic story is in my book, is an honest medicine. But how I got the doctor to putting Silverlawn on Tim's head while he was in the hospital, it was one of my great PR feats, you know.
Well, it's not easy to be able to get the attention of a doctor, and we'll talk about it on the program today. And you discuss it so well in the book, Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested, Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. The website, Julia's website, is honestmedicine.com. You do there's a lot of great information there. And you do, as I mentioned, coaching the teleseminars where you're actually working with a number of families who are concerned, who would like to find some information. And your husband, they ended up, the best prognosis was 3 years, and he ended up surviving 15 years.
And I'm not so sure that if this hadn't happened, you know, with the non-healing skin and all of, I mean, you know, all of these extra surgeries, as I said, left him in a very bad state. And by the time I found the Silverlawn through the doctor colleague, you know, it was basically almost too late. But anyway, I wanted to tell your audience that you would think that the doctors would have been delighted. We put the Silverlawn on his head. He started to heal the next day. And oh my God, I was so excited because even though he was very, very compromised, very brain injured, I loved him. He was my husband and the love of my life. And, you know, so I thought the doctors would be happy for us. No, it turns out I began to know why. I wonder, why are they staying away from me? They had loved me before. And I found out. One doctor came up to me and he said, you know, we, meaning his fellow doctors and he, don't think it was the treatment that you found. And he did the accent on you know, me. And I said, well, what do you think it was? And then he said the words that set me about becoming a patient advocate. He said, well, we think it was the vancomycin. That's the IV antibiotic that Tim had been on for 6 weeks. We think it was vancomycin. And we think it was the vancomycin. And I said, but you know, he's been on it for 6 weeks. The doctor said, yes. And we think that vancomycin just kicks in. Vancomycin is like that. And I said, oh my God. You know?
It's amazing.
You know what, Rick? My husband was a lawyer. And there is a phrase, mirabile dictu. It means miracle to say. on the very day that we put Silverlon on his head, vancomycin chose that day to kick in, you know?
Yeah, amazing. And that's one of 4 treatments that you talk about in the book, Honest Medicine. And let's talk about finding the right information. There is so much information, probably way too much information available out there. And tip number 1, if it sounds good to be true, it probably is. That's an old saying, but it applies to medicine as well. And
Yeah.
you're saying even in the 4 treatments that you have, these are not cure-all. It doesn't work all across the board, and they're not miracle. You really need to use some discretion as you're looking at this information.
Yeah, you know something? I kind of, I was asked to write an article, and I did, about this. And this was the first thing that just occurred to me, that if it seems too good to be true, it really, really is. And people always send me information about treatments. Julia, do you think this treatment is a good one? And I noticed that there's a common thread through a lot of them. This miracle treatment that cures all blah, blah, blahs. Nothing can cure all of anything,
Yes.
Even the treatments that I write about. The ketogenic diet works on 67% of children. It's a high-fat, low-carb diet, low-protein diet too, that has been working since the 1920s at places like Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic, and has had a marvelous, marvelous result with helping children to get rid of their seizures. But even the ketogenic diet, it works to some extent in 67%. Now that's high. That's as good as or better than the high cost toxic drugs that
Right.
doctors like to use for kids. But it's not all children. And that it's not snake oil. It's not all children. And
Yes.
so on and so forth with the other treatments I write about, in Honest Medicine. Low dose naltrexone. We talked about it last time. If you want to, maybe the time before, we were talking about my grandmother last time, but we talked about low dose naltrexone and how it was developed. And I urge people to buy my book, Honest Medicine, and read about it, and also to, of course, listen to your past shows with me. But it doesn't work on everybody. So, and the same thing with intravenous alpha-lipoic acid. Dr. Berkson has saved many, many people from needing liver transplants, but he has not saved every single person who came. So, people were sending me links to all these miracle cures. That's another thing. Nothing is a miracle. Now, as I say in my book, In Honest Medicine, yes, when these treatments work for people, and they work in many, many instances, thousands of patients,
Right.
they're miraculous for those patients, but they still are not miracle cures. Am I making that clear?
Yes, and that's so important for people to understand. And the book we're talking about is Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. Julia Schopick is the author and our guest on This Week in America. We were talking about how you find out the information you've got, and most of this information is available as well at the website, honestmedicine.com. Avoid treatments for with obvious financial ties. And you mentioned your dad was aware, and all of the maybe the hidden connections there between people in the medical community and people in the pharmaceutical community. Look for small studies on treatment you're considering, and you've got a website, a government website, where you can get information, even available on what we would call alternative therapies. And a few minutes left in the program. It's going by too quickly, but once you have that information, it is so crucial to get the information to the doctor. And you say what you don't do is go in and say, Doc, I found this on the internet.
Oi, gut,
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
You know what? My dad used to come home and he'd say, the patients are bringing me this information from the Reader's Digest. Well, he hated that because it implied that the Reader's Digest knew more than he did,
Yes.
So today's Reader's Digest, even though the Reader's Digest, I believe, still exists, more patients are coming in, more savvy patients, very empowered patients are bringing all this stuff from the internet. And they say, well, the first thing they do is, I found this treatment on the internet. And I go, oh, when people say, I talked to my doctor. I told him that I found this information about whatever the treatment is, silver lawn or a ketogenic diet or low dose naltrexone. I found information on the internet. I said, oh, I wish you had contacted me before this. I
Yes.
could have helped you. But, you know, that once you've said that, the doctor's already predisposed to being upset. What you really should do is, yes, go on the internet, find all the information, print it out for yourself. That's your first step. And read it, and you become knowledgeable. Do you know the number of people that I have coached about, say, low dose naltrexone and how to present it to their doctors really don't know about it themselves? And they're expecting to convince their doctors. And from how we've talked in the past and today, doctors are a pretty hard sell. They don't want to get information from patients. So you've got to do it in a really convincing way.
And you emphasize you need to do this in an intelligent conversation. You really need to know what you're talking about and be able to back it up with facts and with studies.
Yes. And the studies are very, very interesting. Doctors will say, and I really want to stress this, Rick, they will say, well, there hasn't been enough evidence. And then the patient, kind of cowers in the corner. Oh, my God, and then the doctor will say, these are anecdotal. No, 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 no. A really good treatment, like the ones I write about in my book, In Honest Medicine, they do have studies. They may not have the big studies that pharma likes. But then we have to know that big pharma usually pays to have the studies done on drugs that it itself is manufacturing. So those studies are not as impressive maybe as your doctor thinks. But the small studies are out there on every single one of the treatments that I write about in Honest Medicine. So go to PubMed. All you need to do, in the article I wrote, I put the address of PubMed. All you really need to do is to go PUBMED in any search bar, and the link will come up. And go to PubMed and research. I actually have an article that I wrote that was published in the New Consciousness Review. If anybody wants a copy, just write to me at Julia at Honest Medicine. It has all this information in there. But go to PubMed and put in the search bar the name of the treatment. And these figures would not even be accurate today, because the figures that I gave you, Rick, when I wrote the article, they're probably higher. Each of the treatments I write about has multiple studies done on it. A lot of them are done in Europe. Some are, some aren't. Some are done in this country. But doctors don't know about them. Put them together in a very interesting, simple way in a folder that you are going to be sharing with your doctor. But choose the studies that really are impressive to you and you think they will be to your doctor. Put the link so that the doctor can find it on PubMed. I put together a whole page, I guess you could call it a whole file of information on all of the studies, on the most impressive studies done on low-dose naltrexone. Not all of them, but the most impressive ones. And I have the link, and then I have, just a portion of it, and that part of the abstract. This will be very impressive to your doctor.
And here is what you're referred to as Julia's magic words. And I love this. If the answer is no, when you make the presentation, if you say, if I find another doctor to prescribe, will you still be my doctor? That's like throwing cold water on the doctor, right? That gets his attention.
I have heard nobody that the doctor said no. And you know what? When my client said that to me about Julia's magic words, I cracked up. Because in a way, you're right. It could be seen as manipulative to say that, because nobody wants to say, no, I won't follow you.
Yes. Well, that's a last resort. And so much of this information, life-saving information, is available at Julia's website, which is honestmedicine.com. Julia Schopick, our guest on the program. The book is Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. It is a must-read. The website, an award-winning blog available at honestmedicine.com. You can link onto our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and go directly to Julia's site. It is always a pleasure to have you on the program. The time always goes by too quickly, and we will have you back.
Well, I certainly hope so, because I have more fun being on your show than anyone else.
Well, I enjoy having you here, and it really is great information that people need to get out there. And they hear, okay, I can find the information, but I think we did a lot today in talking about how to make that basically a formal presentation to the doctor. If you do it right, you may find him receptive, her receptive. If you don't, you may have to go to plan B, which is find another doctor and then see, and then tell the doctor that and see how that goes. So
use Julia's magic words.
Yes, exactly. Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested, Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases is the book. The website, honestmedicine.com. You're listening to This Week in America, our website, thisweekinamerica.us.